Interpretation. Yes.
Okay.
So if we are English speakers, we need to go in and select English, correct?
Correct. Thank you.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. So moving into our agenda for the session, we're going to be talking about data and exploring data in EdSight, which is Connecticut's one-stop location for education data. But in this session, we're not going to just look at data. We're going to learn how to use that data in context so it becomes meaningful information about your school and district. Now, before I introduce our partners and our featured speaker, it's my pleasure to introduce Connecticut's Commissioner of Education, Charlene Russell Tucker.
Thank you, Judy, and hello, everyone. I am so happy to be with you all to kick off this session and to welcome all of you that's joining us this evening. As Judy mentioned, this session is focused on sharing data, or what I call information, providing you as parents, guardians, or community members with an overview of this education data, and I call it education information that is publicly available to you about your school, your district, and frankly, the state as a whole. This data platform that brings this wealth of information to you is called EdSight. And I have to tell you, we get a lot of compliments across the nation for our EdSight data portal. You know, as you know, the pandemic has been challenging for all of us, adults and students alike. And as we move forward, it's especially important that we all work together. That's our educators, our parents and families, our community members, policymakers, and other stakeholders to make Connecticut's public schools the highest achieving in the nation. And to be successful in accomplishing that goal, it really is important that our decisions are guided and grounded by the best available data. And that is why the department strongly believes that data transparency, making it publicly available, is a key element of collective accountability. How else would we know what's working, what should be celebrated, and what course correction that we need to make? So as our students progress through public schools, the state collects some key information about their engagement in school, their achievements, their accomplishments. We also have data about educators and resources. Those are all collected. So this session will give you an overview of some of those key data points and also for trends. So we encourage you, as you get this new learning and information, to engage with other parents or families who are unable to join us, engage with your local school officials, yes, engage with the Department of Education, that's us, around these data in a thoughtful manner so we can really achieve collective accountability. So together we can work on improvements and, you know, also celebrate the successes that we see. I really, as I end here, would like to appreciate our department's performance team, led by our Chief Performance Officer, Ajit Gopalakrishnan, who you'll meet in a few minutes. Thank you to Dr. Judy Carson, who you've met, who leads our family and community engagement work, who collaborated with our key partners, our Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center, CPAC, our Connecticut Family School Partnerships at CRAC, and Connecticut PTA in making this evening possible. So again, thank you for being here. And you know, I look forward to more of these opportunities to engage together on behalf of our 500,000 plus students. I would tell you what that exact number is, but I'm gonna hold it because I'm sure by the time you get done this evening with Ajit guiding you through our data portal, that you'll know what that exact number is. So I won't tell you, but I'm sure you'll be able to get to it by the time we get done. So thank you all very much. I'll turn things back over to Judy. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And this is our first voyage into offering EdSight for families and parents. And I have to say, you all really came forward and we were very gratified with the response. Over 270 people registered for this webinar. A number of people told us they weren't able to make it live, but they'd like to have the link. And we will be sending the link to everyone who registered. So even if you're attending in person, you'll still get the link. And it is in large part because of our partners that we're able to create this session for you tonight. And I'd like to ask each of our partners to say a word of welcome from their organization. I'm going to start with CPAC, and I do want to note that it is through CPAC that we're able to offer the Spanish interpretation and the translation for this session. And we are deeply grateful to CPAC for being a key partner and making this a truly bilingual event. So from CPAC, Beth Reel, the co-executive director, is here with us tonight. Beth.
Thank you, Judy. I'm so glad to be here, and we're really grateful to offer this session. Jen, Lucia, and I are here from the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center, and we are what's called a Parent Training and Information Center, or PTI, for the state of Connecticut. We're funded through the federal government as the Parent Training Information Center, and then we also receive funding from the state and many other partners throughout the state, including CREC and others that are on today. So what we do is we help families with children with disabilities navigate the special education system. We work with families with children from birth to age 26, whether they have a diagnosis or are just beginning to question whether something's going on. We do that in a variety of ways, through trainings, through telephone calls, and a variety of programs that we offer. We will put a link in the chat in a little while so that you can look at our programs a little bit deeper. That will also have our contact information that we're happy to share. And I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but I just want to give Jen a moment and a shout out. Jen is our EdSight cheerleader at CPAC and is always helping us navigate things and find good information to help our families. So thank you so much, Jen. And thank you, Judy and Commissioner, for this opportunity.
Great, thank you, Beth. And next, Connecticut State PTA. I'm very pleased that Jen Filatico is able to be with us this evening. And they have done a terrific job of helping us with outreach and continuing to get the message out to their members. So welcome, Jen.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here tonight. The mission of PTA is to make every child's potential a reality by engaging and empowering families and communities to advocate for all children. One of the ways we work toward our mission is through our relationship with the Connecticut Department of Education. As students and families continue to struggle with the impact the pandemic has had on them, we're thrilled to support the Department of Education in their efforts to inform and empower families and communities. While this evening's presentation will help families better understand the data that informs school performance and the academic impact the pandemic has had on student success, I'm most excited that it will also provide resources and tools for families to use long after this call is over. As questions arise, you'll have places to go and faces of people that you can go and talk to with your questions. And I just want to say thank you again to the State Department for having us as part of this session tonight. We're thrilled to be here.
Thank you. And next is Betsy Laborious, who's the director of Connecticut's Statewide Family Engagement Center at CREC. And this is a federally funded center. Not every state has one. And we're very fortunate to be among the 13 states that have this center, and it's a tribute to the good work that Betsy and her team have been doing at CREC. So welcome, Betsy. Oop, Betsy, you might be muted. Oh no, did we lose Betsy?
Mute, okay.
There you are.
We don't see Betsy, but that is okay. That is okay because Betsy can speak. Thank you, Judy Carson, so much for the introduction. You see me.
We see you.
Okay, thank you. It's okay. But my name is Betsy Laborious, and welcome everyone here tonight. And I work at Capital Region Education Council, and I am the director for the Statewide Family Engagement Center in Connecticut. And it is a federally funded program, as Judy said, and we are one of 13 states very proud to have this program in Connecticut. And in Connecticut, we are the Connecticut Family School Partnership, a network for education. And we are very pleased to partner with the State Department of Education and the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center, our partners, to offer information and training on EdSight. Our mission really is to look at partnerships, because we know that when families and schools and communities work together, young people do better. The research these days is incredibly clear. One thing I want you to know is I wear another hat this evening. I serve on my community's Board of Education. In fact, I'll be leaving the meeting a little bit early because I do have a board meeting, and I will be sharing EdSight and the valuable information that is offered here tonight. It's clear from the amount of people that are here tonight and the interest from the numbers that our citizens are interested in this topic: school and district performance. How are our children doing? How are our young people thriving? I would like to commend both Beth and Jen Lucier, who I know very well, a parent leader and an advocate from CPAC, and the State Department of Education and our commissioner for sharing the EdSight portal, and most importantly, as we talked about before, making it accessible to our families and to our educators and to the community. This will make a difference. Thank you, Judy.
Thank you, Betsy. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter and EdSight tour guide for the evening. My colleague, Ajit Gopalakrishnan, is the Chief Performance Officer for the State Department of Education. And I'm just going to stop sharing and turn it over to Ajit.
Thank you, Judy. I think the screen should be up now.
Yes.
Can you see it? Okay, great. Well, good evening, everyone. It's good to be with all of you. My name is Ajit Gopalakrishnan. I'm the Chief Performance Officer for the Department of Education. And today I'm going to give you a little tour. I guess I'm the tour guide today, so that's great. Just giving you a little tour of the EdSight data portal. And there's a lot of data here, a lot of information, and a lot of metrics, but I'm going to try to keep it as simple as I possibly can. To give you a sense of how to get a quick picture of a school or district. And for some folks who are interested in a little bit more advanced, deeper dives, some visualizations that we have to help you dig a little deeper into that work. I'm going to post a link to EdSight in the chat here. That is the link to our data portal, EdSight. We recommend that you access it from a slightly bigger screen, like a computer or a tablet, so that you can see many of the visualizations a little bit better. So we hope that you are able to do that while being in this meeting. Or as Betsy mentioned, if you're not able to get to it, all of it today, know that what you learned today will help you play around and dig with this information deeper on your own time. And of course, you know who we are at the state, and please do not hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions after the session. So what you see here is the homepage of the EdSight data portal. And before I jump into particular specifics here, this is a little bit of a working session here. So you're going to have to do some looking and finding and searching as we're browsing through the EdSight data portal here. So, and what are you looking for? So this is an open book test here. So there's no secrets, there's no tricks here. So I'm going to actually put for you in the chat the form that you'll need to be completing when we're done with our tour, if you will. I'm going to ask you, as you're going through the data, as I'm presenting, to think about a district or a school that you want to find out more about. And in the form, we ask particular questions, and I'm going to pull up that form so you can actually see it. In addition to your name, we want you to select a district, and we want you to get some data about that district. What is the district's enrollment? What is the percentage of English learners in that district? What is the district's chronic absenteeism rate? And we'll talk about that. What is the percentage of educators of color in the district? Who is the district's homeless liaison? Which was the most popular computer science course in the district last year? And what is the difference in the district's performance index in math from 18-19 to 21-22? So we're going to make you work a little bit here because we want you to actually get hands-on with this thing. So these are the questions you're going to try to answer as you go through the session today. So as we're going through the different pieces, if you find the answer to your particular district, just jot it down. And later on in the session, you'll be able to fill out this form, and we'll actually be able to see the responses from all of you coming into a little Excel that I've created. So we can all see our responses coming in live. So that is the task at hand as you're going through the session. So don't worry, you'll have time to sort of work this through, and I'll walk you through the different reports that contain this information. All right, back to the EdSight homepage here. So, EdSight is the state's data portal. So I want to say one word about data that the state has and data that your local school and district have about your students and the district as a whole. The state really gets a small subset of the data that exists at the district level. We don't get everything. So let me give you an example. In your school, many of you may have, if the school is using Power School or Infinite Campus or something, you may be signed up to receive alerts from them. And if your child misses a class or a day, if they're sick, you might get an alert from the school saying your child is absent today. That level of daily attendance information is one example that the local district has, but the state does not have. So the state actually has a smaller set of information than what the district actually has. The district has information about every assignment. The school might have every assignment that the kid is doing, and what's the grades on every single assignment within a course. The state doesn't have that information. So just remember, at the state, we have some higher level information, but not all the sort of granular detail that you might have at a school or district. All right, with that background, let's jump right in. The first report that I'd like to discuss is the Connecticut Report Cards. And I'm going to click on this link here on the right-hand side. I don't know if you can see my mouse moving there, Judy. If you do, yep. Okay, yes. Good. So I'm going to click on that, and you'll come to this Connecticut Report Card site. You can pick an individual district, and then if you pick a district, you'll be able to pick a school. But I'm going to start with the state report card. And I'm going to click on that, and it's going to actually pull up the state's report card. And we'll give it a second to load here. And you'll see on the very top, you've got some high-level information about the state. We have, the commissioner was saying about the number of students. So here is the total number of students in the state. And this data is for the 21-22 school year. We're actually in the midst of collecting the data for the 22-23 school year, and that will be up sometime in February. This shows you how many schools and programs we have in the state. This shows you how much we spend per pupil in the most recent year for which we have data. This particular highlight shows you how many certified staff FTE we have now. What is FTE? It represents full-time equivalent staff. So if you have 2 people each working half-time, that's 1 FTE. So we have over 53,000 FTE in our state. And then here on the right-hand side is our accountability index. Now, what is the accountability index? It is the overall score for the state on a variety of indicators from our accountability system. So every school and district has a score like that, but that's the score for the state. And we want to be more in the 85 and up range and this sort of range. So we clearly, as a state, have some work to do, right? And you'll see where your individual schools and districts are when you select that as well. So do you see these 4 buttons down, these 4 sort of expandable menus down at the bottom? You have students, educators, instruction, and performance. If I click on students, it expands to show you a bunch of different data charts. And you notice that every chart, there's a trend information that's being displayed. So let's walk through each of these, or some of these charts. We don't have time to go through every detail, but I'll give you some overview here. Statewide enrollment, that's the number of students in Connecticut public schools. And you see that 5 years ago, we used to have about 535,000 students, and now we're at 513,000 students. And that's a trend. Connecticut has experienced declining enrollment for some time, something you might see in your own school or district. You can see what is the racial, ethnic, demographic breakdown for the state here, and you'll have a similar chart for your own school or district as well. If you look at percentage eligible for free or reduced price meals, one of the things we look for in our student is, how many of our students have socioeconomic needs and how we can support them the best, either with meals, free or reduced price meals, or other benefits in our schools, like fee waivers for AP exams or dual enrollment courses that our students might take. So we sort of track that information. We also know how many of our students are students with disabilities, and you can see that trend, increasing trend. And same with English learners. We've seen an increasing proportion of our students who are English learners, and it's almost 9% and potentially increasing. And before I go further, you'll notice for each of these buttons, there is a little icon here that actually tells you, if you click on it, it will tell you a little bit more about that particular information, about that particular indicator. Then we come to this measure, chronic absenteeism, percentage of students chronically absent. And you see that is increasing. Now, what is chronic absence? Chronic absence is a student is said to be chronically absent if they miss at least 10% of their school days. So if a school is operating for 180 school days, which is the minimum that the state law requires, if a student misses 18 or more days due to any reason, whether it be excused or unexcused, if they miss school, then that is an absence. So if a student misses 18 days of school, and if they're scheduled to be in school for 180 days, then that student is considered chronically absent. Now, this is why schools are making a big push, and especially with the pandemic, we've seen attendance in school become more of a challenge. So, this is part of our message to families to say, attendance in school is extremely important, not just to make sure our attendance numbers are good, but because students learn best when they're in school. And we've seen that over the pandemic. So attendance in school, extremely important. And it's a measure we track for schools and districts. So when your child misses school, it actually plays into that school's or district's chronic absenteeism rate, as you see here for the state as a whole. But you also notice this other little icon that's next to chronic absence. And that looks like a gauge, a dial, right? If I click on it, what it says is that, I'll scroll a little bit to the right, it says chronic absenteeism is an accountability indicator, meaning that we hold schools and districts accountable for the chronic absenteeism rate. And actually how the chronic absenteeism plays out affects this overall score that you see here, the accountability index. For the state, it also affects the school and district's attendance and absenteeism rate. So it's important. It's a really important measure that we track closely. So it's important for you to know that as well. So that's why that little dial is there. And then we also track suspension and expulsion rates. We've sort of looked at like what percentage of our students are receiving an in-school suspension, an out-of-school suspension, or an expulsion. And with the pandemic, when there was a lot of remote instruction going on, those rates reduced, but now it's, with last year, this is the year for which we have the most recent data, it's up to 6.5%. So basically what that's saying is 1 out of every 16 students in our public schools experiences an in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension, or an expulsion. So that's the student data. So I'll collapse that. The next data you have is about educators. Now, again, I'm looking at state level data, but you can do the same thing for your individual district. And, you know, you should pick a district and find out these same metrics because you're going to need it for completing this survey, right? So start looking through the report card, excuse me, there we are, report card for your own district. You can look at the full-time equivalent. So even though our student enrollment is declining, notice that our staff capacity has actually been increasing a little bit. We have more students with disabilities, more English learners in our population, so more need for more support and educators. So that's what this represents. And I'm going to skip a few of these charts in the interest of time. I'm going to go to instruction and resources. I want to point you to a couple of indicators here. One is on track to high school graduation. What we're looking for here is whether students in 9th grade are earning the requisite number of credits to be on track to graduate high school in 4 years or less. So this is about 9th graders. And you notice how with the pandemic that's declined. And I have 2 high school seniors myself now. I have an older child who's graduated from our public schools, and I know how it's been tough for them during the pandemic. And so it's really important that we make sure our 9th graders are on track and they catch up. So, and you notice that's also an accountability indicator because there's that little gauge there. And then on the very right side, I want to point you to another chart that shows you per pupil expenditures. And you notice how 5 years ago, we were spending about $16,500, and now we're spending about a little over $19,000. With the pandemic, we've seen a bigger infusion of federal relief dollars for the pandemic. And so that's what you're seeing sort of playing a big part here as well. And lastly, I will show you the performance section. And there are a lot of charts here, and this is important for us to track. So I showed you the accountability index, right? So this big number that's up here, this big dial for 69.7 for the state. And you notice where the state was prior to the pandemic, right? So we were actually having somewhat of an increasing trend. And then with the pandemic, after a couple of years of accountability hiatus, if you will, we're now below 70, and that's not, obviously that's not good. And you've seen when you have indicators like chronic absenteeism going up, those types of points, you know, we don't do well overall on the indicator. So that's what you're seeing here. And then we have some measures on achievement. So here you see the Connecticut Performance Index. And now when you go to a district, you'll see the district performance index for ELA, which is English Language Arts. And you notice that that's an accountability indicator. You see it for math and you see it for science. And these 3 measures represent average performance. They basically tell us how the kids in the school, the district, or in this case, the state as a whole, how are they doing on our state assessment? We want this number to be 75, but as you can see, prior to the pandemic, we were inching up. And then with the pandemic, we've taken a hit. It's a substantial hit. We've taken another substantial hit even with our mathematics performance, perhaps a greater hit with our mathematics performance. So we know the pandemic has been hard on our students, our educators. So that's what you're seeing here, the impact of the pandemic. Little less so in science from the prior to the pandemic to the pandemic now. So that represents, those 3 bars represents achievement. How are kids doing? Then we have a couple of charts here on the right side that look at growth. And growth looks at how the same student is growing from one year to the next. And we track that because if growth is improving, then we know that achievement will improve and catch up as well. And what we see with the pandemic is there is a slight improvement in growth, especially in mathematics. And if I don't have this chart here, but if you break it out by grade, you see that the elementary grades are picking up. So our pace of learning is a little bit better after the pandemic, especially in the elementary grades. But I have to say, middle school mathematics continues to be an area of concern for us at the state. So we look at achievement, but we also look at growth. Then we have some other measures here, and I'm really just going to highlight a couple here for you to pay. I mean, there's many of them, but the ones I want to bring your attention to is the 4-year graduation rate. That looks at what percent of 9th graders are graduating within 4 years. And as you can see, that's been increasing. So that's good. Our students are making it through to the finish line, almost 90% of them. And then we also look at a 6-year graduation rate for what we call our high need students. And our high need students are students who are either English learners, students with disabilities, or from a low income family. So English learners, students with disabilities, or from a low income family. If a student is any one of those three, we consider them as high needs. And we track their graduation rate as well, not within 4 years, but within 6 years, because we want to give some of those students, they might need a couple extra years to graduate. So we look for that, and that rate has inched up a little bit over the last few years. And it's always a little bit lagging indicator, but there you see that it's at 85.2%. And lastly, you see here college entrance. You know, with the pandemic, that's taken a hit too. For years, it was in the low to mid 70s, and then now it's kind of gotten down to 66%, and that's concerning for us as well. So this is the Connecticut Report Card, and if you take, yep, are there questions coming in?
Yes, before we move on, we do have a question from a participant. Are the chronic absentee numbers reflective of required absences due to COVID policies? Is that why the chronic absentee rates grew so much? Or was there a definition change?
Good. So good question. Thank you for that. So it's a combination of things, right? So with the pandemic, when students, it varied a little bit based on the year. So in 2021, when students could opt to be remote, if they were remote, but they attended school, they were counted as present. But what we saw was that on remote days, attendance was not as good on in-person days, which is why we pushed kids to come back in person. Last year in 21-22, if kids were home because they were COVID positive and they were sick or they were quarantining, they could have piped in remotely, but again, the attendance was not as good. So in those 2 COVID years, if kids were home due to COVID, they did have chances to come or attend school remotely, but again, it was not, the attendance on remote days wasn't as good, and that's part of the reason why we pushed for in-person instruction and, you know, learning back to school. And so that's why you see some of those chronic absenteeism numbers increasing. There was not a definitional change. It was still the same 10% standard.
And we had one more asking about student growth.
Yep, I see that. What are the metrics that measure student growth? And the metric that measures student growth is really growth on the Smarter Balanced assessment. So you'll see here, it looks at Smarter Balanced growth. And I will put a link, Judy, to our growth model. It basically says that regardless of where the student is in the achievement spectrum, maybe they're low achieving, maybe they're high achieving, maybe they're middle of the road, it doesn't really matter. There is a sort of an achievable growth target for each student. So if it's a 3rd grade student, then there is a target that they need to achieve by the end of 4th grade. And those are not, it doesn't magically mean that the student has to become proficient in a year or go from the lowest level of achievement to the highest level of achievement in one single year. It's a reasonable growth target that they're expected to achieve. And what these data tell you are that students are achieving, at least at the state level, on average about 2/3 of their growth target. They should be achieving, notice the target here is 100. We want students to achieve on average 100% of their growth target. That's what we need. I don't want to go and look for that growth model, but that is available as well. There are videos we have available, and we can even follow up, Judy, with this presentation, sending families and parents videos of that take like a 5-minute, 10-minute explanation of how we measure growth and what the metrics mean.
Absolutely.
I don't see any other questions. Do you see anything else, Judy?
I don't.
Okay, great. So I will keep moving. So I guess what I was saying is if nothing else from this presentation, just bookmark the report card site. This site is actually even friendly on a phone. Much of the rest of EdSight, you do need to be on a bigger screen, but this particular report, you can access that on a phone, and it's your quickest snapshot as to how a school or district is doing. And you can pick another district from this dropdown, and I can even walk through that as an example. If you pick a particular district, the screen refreshes, you hit submit, and then it'll pull up the report card for that particular district. And you'll notice you've got the same kind of layout here. You see the accountability index, the gauge on the right-hand side. If I click on students, you'll see the student chart. And notice here, when I'm at a district level, you get to see not only the district, but you get to compare it to the state. You get to see how the district compares to the state as a whole. So this is a quick and simple report that gives you some very high-level measures on how the school or district is doing. And with a lot of these measures, you will get those comparisons. All right. To keep us moving here, one of the other questions that we get is, how have we done through this pandemic? And I think one of the speakers at the opening mentioned about the impact of the pandemic on academics. And so one of the reports we have available is our pandemic recovery dashboard. And if you go to performance and if you pick pandemic recovery, this dashboard opens up. And this dashboard is really pulling from our achievement index. And it's the same achievement information that you saw here. The district performance index and in ELA and math and science, this is the information that we're using in this pandemic recovery dashboard. What is this dashboard showing? This dashboard is showing how the achievement in 1819, which is on the x-axis here, the horizontal axis, how it compares to the change in achievement from 19 to 22. So the further right on the horizontal axis, the higher the achievement in 1819. The closer to zero or above zero, it means that the district or school has been able to maintain its achievement relative to where it was before the pandemic. So let's take an example, and this will make it clear. And this is showing you districts, and this is showing you ELA on the top here. So let me hover over one of these bubbles here. And there we go. So this is the North Branford School District. And you notice that their English Language Arts Index in 1819 was 66.3. And in 21-22 was 69.6. And so the difference is a plus 3.2. So what does that mean? That means that their achievement after the pandemic is actually higher than before the pandemic. So that's what this chart is showing over here. So if you go to another district on this end here, so here is New Haven School District with about over 10,000 students in the tested grades. Now, the district has more students, but this is only showing the grades in which we administer our state assessment. You notice that their ELA achievement was 57.8 in 1819, and it went to 51.3. So the difference is negative 6.5. So they've lost ground in the pandemic, and they're actually below this zero line, if you will. So that's what this is showing you. So the closer you are to zero, the zero line, the less ground you've lost. If you're above zero, then you gain ground after the pandemic. So it's a quick way to sort of get a sense of how different districts and schools are doing. But that's the start here, right? But you got many more features on this report. You can switch to math. You can look to see how math is doing. You can also select different district types. So you can pick individual districts. So, if you want to pick a few districts, you can just pick some districts. And it'll just plot those select districts on the chart here. And you can, if you flip to math, it'll show you the math achievement, again, just for those districts. So it gives you the ability to filter some districts. If you change it to school level, it'll show you the same data, but just for the schools in the district. So you can switch between district level and school level. Not only that, you can also look at different student groups here. So you can say, for example, you want to know how students with disabilities are doing relative to others. Now you've got a chart The orange represents students with disabilities in those selected districts, and the blue represents students without disabilities in those same districts. And again, you can hover over those dots to see how their achievement for those students has changed pre to post pandemic. So it's a quick way to see how different groups are doing. You can do the same thing for English learners and see how English learners, sometimes some schools don't have enough students. When you don't have enough students, then a chart, a data point doesn't render in that case. And you can do the same thing for students eligible for free or reduced price meal eligibility as well.
Are you ready for a question?
I am looking at it.
Okay.
How do we learn the details behind the metrics? For instance, what goes into arts access? Excellent question. And for this, I am going to point you to our if you go to overview and you go to next generation accountability, or if you go under here on this side, you see the new and updated. We just released our accountability results. If you go to our legacy report for the accountability information, you have the using accountability results to guide improvement. Now, I know whoever asked this, there is a lot more information that this guide entails. I'll just open it up. It's a long document, but it's available to you, and I'll put a link to this document in the chat as well, that you can dig into it. What this document has is indicator 12 arts access, so you can actually go and see what is contained in that particular indicator. If we go back to the report cards and I look at that instruction measure, arts access, you can also click on the I button there, and it shows you percentage of students at grades 9 through 12 participating in at least one dance, theater, music, or visual arts course in the school year. So it gives you a brief description of what this is right here, and the detail is in the link I provided to you in the chat. All right. Another question is, are the school performance data reports inclusive of data for all students in both general and special ed? That is correct. The school performance data includes all students. It also provides you with disaggregation of those data so that you can look at chronic absenteeism for students with disabilities. You can look at chronic absenteeism for English learners, chronic absenteeism for by race, ethnicity. You can do all those breakouts, but when it comes to the accountability measure, it includes all students and the high needs student group. And like I mentioned, the high needs students group is students who are English learners, students with disabilities, or from low-income families. When we look at performance measures like our test scores, it includes students in those grades who take the state assessments. So those would be in grades 3 through 8 and 11. That's where the federal and state law require for those tests to be given. So good questions. So I showed you the pandemic recovery dashboard, which was right here. We looked at that. Let's look at another one, which is educator diversity. And I know this is one of the questions on your chart there. So on your assignment. So educator diversity is this dashboard right here. You can just click on that and it'll open up the educator diversity dashboard. And what does this dashboard show? Let's take a look. This dashboard shows a trend on the percent of educators of color compared to the students of color. Notice in the state as a whole, we have gone from, this is 2009-10. Our data do go back quite a ways. We had about a third of our students were students of color. Today, over 50% of our students are students of color. And look at the educators of color too has increased. It's gone from about 7.8% to now over 10%. And I know this is a high priority for the state and districts as well, working really hard to recruit educators of color. And here too, you have the ability to select individual districts. So one of the questions on your task is to ask you about percent of educators of color. So make sure you find that out for your district. This is another chart that gives you that information. Thank you, Judy, for posting the direct link as well. Appreciate it. Another dashboard that we have, and there's plenty of data reports on EdSight. So if I go back to the home page, and if I go to instruction and computer science, you can actually get a sense of what types of computer science courses are offered in your district or your school, and how many students are participating in it, which is the most popular one. So this is data at the state level for 21-22. You notice here the 13% basically says 13% of students are participating in computer science courses. And this is at the high school level. So this is not in elementary, middle school, this is at the high school level. And you can see top 10 computer science courses at the state level: computer programming, robotics, engineering, design, etc. As you see, which is the most popular is computer science. And one of the biggest disparities we see in the computer science data is around gender. The lieutenant governor of our state has a high priority around computer science and getting girls into computer science education. In fact, last week, I believe, was Computer Science Week nationally. So it is a high priority for us. So if you look at participation in computer science statewide, you notice that 8% of females are taking computer science courses, but 18% of males are taking computer science courses. So there's your gender gap that you see. This is state, but if you go to district, you can actually select the district. It defaulted to Hartford there, but you can pick any district and it'll give you that same information. So you can see here, 12% of 19% of students. I picked East Granby for some random reason. You see 19% of students are participating in computer science, and engineering design is kind of their most popular course. And you see the gender breakout in their case as well. And you can even get down to the high school level. You can actually pick a particular high school as well. So there's a lot more in this dashboard. You can change years as well and so on. So make sure you find out for your own district what is the most popular computer science course. I'm giving away the questions here, but that is a question on the, I'm giving away the answers, making it easy for you to find. Another good question here. I think my question didn't post. What is the N for data to be visible? The minimum N for which we calculate a statistic is 20. So if we break out by gender, or if we break out by race, ethnicity, if a particular group doesn't have at least 20 students, then we won't compute a metric. There are even more nuanced rules than that. Sometimes if the numerator, if it's a percentage, and if the numerator doesn't have at least 6 students, then we won't display a percentage as well. These are all measures to protect student confidentiality from the aggregate data. Even from aggregate data, you can get to student information. So we try to go to great lengths to protect that student confidentiality when we report these data publicly. And the last dashboard that I'm going to show you is finding contact. We have lots of information. I mean, there's obviously many more things that I haven't covered at all, but I want to go to this find contacts report here. And again, this is a question on your dashboard, but if you're looking to find out who's the Title IX coordinator for my district, for example, you can just click this button here and it gives you, again, for all districts, but you can just search for your district. And if you are in, let's say, Hartford, I can just type in Hartford and pick the Hartford School District. And there, that's the Title IX coordinator's information. If you want the homeless liaison, which is a question on the form, here's the homeless liaison coordinator information, in this case for Hartford. Now, in this report, if you want to send an email to the person, you can just double click on it. I won't do it now, but if you double click on it, it'll just open up your email client and you'll be able to send an email. If you want to know who your school nurse supervisor is, you can click that and find that information as well. So again, a lot of these contact information at your fingertips. Again, there's lots of other information. You want to know who the superintendent is. You want to know who the assistant superintendents are in the district. if they've reported that to us, who the special ed director is. You've got all that information available to you here. And if you don't pick a particular district, if you're just doing the whole state, if you're just looking at the whole state information, you want a list of, let's say, the Title IX coordinators, you can just export this list to Excel as well. So that is available to you as well. All right, I think I have, you're probably in data overflow at this point. Is there more questions, Judy?
I don't see any.
All right, I am going to now, so again, just to remind you, if you could go to this form, and Judy, if you don't mind posting the link to the form again in the chat. So if you go to this form, and if you could submit your information for your district, and look what I'm going to do in just a second here. I'm not going to give out your name, but I am going to put out your district. So let's see here. All right, I hope you can see this information.
Yes.
So we already have 4 submissions, Judy.
Woo.
People are getting ahead, which is awesome. And look at this. The districts that the individuals who responded to the survey, the districts they picked, and the data they found on EdSight. Here we go. And so we'll hang on the screen for a little bit. If you have any questions, please post that in the chat as well. There are many, many more dashboards and reports available to you on EdSight. So if not, I mean, obviously we don't have time to go through all of it now, but hopefully you have a sense of the information that is available. Again, start with the report card. That's your home base. That gives you the bulk of the information you would need. Here's another one coming in. Great, excellent. And I really appreciate your putting the symbols on here, the negative symbols, or in this case they're all negative because achievement has regressed a little bit in the pandemic. So you really appreciate your attention to detail there. And as folks are doing this, I know we have a few more minutes. I could do a little, okay. Someone is asking for a way to pull student data from EdSight. EdSight is our public portal. This is not where you go to get student information. If you want student information, you really should contact your school or district. Like I said at the outset, they have the bulk of the information about your students, and they have that information and should be able to provide that to you. Pretty much everything we have on EdSight comes from the district. So it is information that that they have provided to us. And we are creating metrics from those data and reports to make it publicly available so that, as the commissioner mentioned at the outset, together we can hold ourselves accountable for improving public education in our state. And let's see, let's go back to the chart. I see people must be working through that list here. And as they're doing it, let me actually do a couple of bonus dashboards here.
You know what, Ajit?
Yeah. Are there more questions?
If you don't mind, there's one just came in.
Yeah.
Good question. Much of the data seems to measure a school or district against itself via growth. Is there a way to compare one school or district to another along similar data points without visiting each one individually? Yeah,
great question. Great question. With many of these reports, you have tables available. So for example, I'll pull up growth, right? So I'll go to Smarter Balanced, which is our growth model. And you notice here additional reports that says growth. So you can click on that. And you'll see it starts off with the state level information. And in this report, if you were to just select all districts, and if you hit submit, here, you will get the growth data for all the districts in one fell swoop. And this can actually be exported to Excel, and you can filter it. If you just want to see mathematics growth, you can do that as well. Select math, and you can just submit, and you'll get a full list of just mathematics growth for all districts in the state. You can also increase this to be all schools in the state. I mean, the list gets super long, but or you can pick an individual district. And I'll pick a district that has multiple schools. Let's see, so Danbury, for example. And you can pick a single district and you can say all schools, and then it will actually give you the ability to view growth data for all the schools in that single district, so that you can compare across schools in the district. And we show you our growth rate measure and our average target achieved measure as well. Growth rate is the number of students growing, and the average target achieved is the average percentage of the growth target that was achieved by the school. So here you could see that there is variation even within a single district. And I know there's another question, is why are some schools in the same district spending more money than another school? I think that's a great question for the district to ask. Hey, why are we seeing different levels of expenditure? It could be for a variety of reasons, and I'll speculate a few here. High schools typically tend to have higher expenditures because they have to provide greater variety of instruction. So that's generally something you see. Sometimes some schools might have specialized programs that are operating in a particular school that maybe cost a little more resources. And so when they allocate their expenditures across the different schools in the district, it ends up being that one school building ends up getting more expenditures associated, allocated because of that specialized program. Sometimes expenditures are driven by educators, right? Cost of seniority, and the educator salaries are driven by seniority. So sometimes if one location has a more senior staff core, then that might drive up expenditures too. But it's a good point of discussion. It's like, it's something we have actually asked districts to do, to look at the equitable allocation of resources across their schools. So just because costs are different doesn't mean something is inherently wrong, but it may be due to a variety of reasons, but it is a point of discussion and a point of inquiry to say, hey, why is this happening? Is it because of X, Y, or Z? It's a good question to ask.
I think we're up against time, and that is a great note to land on, that this really is information to start a conversation and ask questions and say, I wonder why this is happening. So that was wonderful. I want to offer Commissioner Russell Tucker a moment to close out our session. Oops. Oops, are you muted?
I can't unmute. Oh, here I am. I was having trouble unmuting. But thank you, Ajit. Thank you so very much, Judy and all our partners, and from all of you that hang in there with us sufficiently, that you're engaged, filled out the form and asking, and all the great questions that you've asked. This is truly what, when we talk about the collective accountability for all of us, it starts here. And so just know you do have this data portal. You now know who we are to ask questions if you need to of us, but this is so important. It is about all of us working together, as I said before, to make sure that we have the best schools in the nation. And it starts with us being able to know what is, what isn't, holding ourselves accountable, celebrating the times that we need to celebrate, and making course correction at the times we need to do that. So we appreciate you and being able to join us for this conversation. You know, we talked about watch parties at one of my meetings with the Commissioners Roundtable for Family Engagement, that I said, let's have some data parties, you know, across the state where folks get together and engage with this data and information so that we can improve education for all their students in the state of Connecticut. So thank you all for joining this evening. Judy, I turn back to you, and thank you all to our partners who've been in this space with us as well.
Thank you, Commissioner, and a shout out to the state and local Board of Ed members who were here with us tonight. We appreciate this. And we just dipped our toe in the EdSight water. There's a lot more that you can do, and we're going to send this video out to you ASAP. But one last word from Ajit.
I just wanted to, I enjoyed this a lot. I know folks are engaging, so this is great. I just want to offer to do this again. Perhaps as a follow-up to this session, after folks have had a chance to go back, play with things, and we could do this again another time. Love to do that.
Awesome.
I agree. And when I send out the video link, I'll ask a question and see if you'd be interested in EdSight 102. And I think we need to offer prizes for people who fill out the form. So next time we'll have prizes.
Judy, I'll just jump in again. I see Mr. Woody Exley, who is wave at us, Woody. He's one of our State Board of Education members who is joining us today. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. My email is in the chat box, and please find me, ask a follow-up question, and we will be in touch with you. Thank you.
Awesome.